What's up, guys? Welcome to Operation B, the podcast. I am your host, Jamie Thurber, and I am here to take you on a journey of deepening, of expansion, of understanding more about who you are and why you're here and how to operate in an optimal way that allows you to do what you want to do, feel how you want to feel, take care of yourself truly, and support everything that your heart desires. Hey guys, welcome back to an episode of Operation B. Today we have a very special guest with us. And if you're local to the St. Louis area, this is a face and a name you've probably seen before or heard of. And I was really excited that she agreed to come on and have a conversation with us. This is Monica Adams.
How are you? Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming. I'm good today. How are you?
Fantastic. Allergies are, it's crazy. I don't have allergies. And I'm like, what's in the air? Mold. I figured it out. Yes.
So I've been sneezing myself. So
I'm not sneezing, but I was like, what's wrong with my voice? So if I sound look like Demi Moore, that's the problem.
It's the weather.
Yes.
That's good.
Yeah.
So we were talking before the show, guys, about Monica's history in broadcasting and in her career. And I was telling her, this is a very hefty bio. So I'm going to let her introduce herself as far as what it comes to her background and what she's doing now.
So, yes. So 30 years in TV and radio. I started in radio for my first 12 years and did some cross-promotional work in television. So my first TV was back in 2005 with Fox 2. For about 18 years. I worked for Channel 2, and then I worked for Channel 5. And it got to a point where I looked at 30 years and thought, okay, I know how to host. I was a sports reporter. I was a news director. I worked in television. I worked in radio. What are the best of all of those that serve people more? Mm-hmm. I can go do this on my own. And when I started looking, I mean, there's an article, I think it was in Forbes magazine, that started talking about the streaming industry being a multi-billion-dollar industry. Yeah. And how, and I watched it happening of TV and radio numbers going down and how many people are consuming their information on our phones, right? Mm-hmm. Taking it in short little snippets, going off to work, coming back, watching YouTube, watching Facebook and X, et cetera, et cetera. And it was, well, then why? First of all, Jamie, why get up at 1:30 in the morning when no one's watching anymore, right? Yeah. And the numbers were going down and down and down. And it's unfortunate because I do have a deep love for the broadcasting industry. I mean, my journalism degree, that's what I love, telling stories. But you get to a point where you're like, okay, well, what's happening in this industry? And what is the new part? Let's go over here. And so I started my show about 2.5 years ago, and I wanted it to be the antithesis of what I did in news. So I wanted people to wake up and have positivity and wake up and have something that served them more. And so we've done 500 plus episodes because we're on every morning at 7 a.m. So I still want to tie in that local audience that was there for me, either letting me in their homes or, from TV, or letting me in their homes from, doing morning radio. Yeah. And then taking what parts of those will serve people. So it's funny because people say, I'm surprised you lasted as long as you did and wanted to stay in the news. And I'm like, well, but as you're going through, and it's all you know, you don't see this shifting pattern until you do, until it's your time. So I think people are like, you seem so happy. I am thrilled. So that is very, very real. I am thrilled with what we're doing. Mm-hmm. And when people ask me the question, do you wish you would have done it earlier? Nope, it's exactly when it was supposed to be.
I love that. I love it. It's funny because that's a perfect segue to something that one of the reasons I wanted you to come on and I'm excited for this conversation is that you're very hardworking. So we have studio spaces in the same building. Before that, it was very obvious that you were hardworking because you're all over the place all the time. I see all these cool segments. And then watching you do pieces of that in person, hardworking is one of my strong suits and also sometimes my enemy. But
exactly.
But being committed to kindness and integrity in any trade is something that I feel like a lot of people don't maintain long term. Right. They'll have spurts of it, and then typically people get jaded or something happens, they go kind of disappear because they just can't do it anymore.
Sure.
And that's a big part of my conversation is constantly being aware of that to prevent that from happening to me or any of my viewers. I like to talk about ways that we can create that for ourselves. Right. And that's something I see you doing across the board, no matter how hectic something might be. You do maintain that what's of integrity to me. I've watched you do that before where you're like, wait, no, I don't think that's not for me.
Well, and I would hope that everyone, but we know it's not true, I would hope that everyone is blessed with a great upbringing.
Sure.
Those that don't, I hope that they find a role model that will help lead them. I was blessed with wonderful parents. They instilled in me that my mom always said when I got into the industry, don't you ever get too big for your britches, right? She's like, I don't care if you get to be Oprah status, don't get too big for your britches. So I will never, ever forget that. Is it a very ego-driven business that I came from? Yes, I saw a lot of it in the industry. I have zero ego. I have confidence. I'm not cocky and I'm not egotistical. I don't think it serves anyone. So for those that still have it within them, I don't understand it and I never will. So every day when we end the show, it is dream big. Be whatever you want to be, but before you're anything, be kind. The greatest thing you can be in life is kind. I have great integrity. I have very high standards, but don't mistake that. I have high standards, but I have an incredible patience. And the people who are on my team see that yes, if something goes wrong, it's not, I'm going to lambaste you and scream at you that you never want to come back. Instead, it's how can I teach you to be better? I just want to have people level up. And my hope in life is that when I'm no longer here, that people say all she wanted to do was help the world be better, right? I always talk about this phrase that the greatest reward in life comes from the most uncomfortable walk.
Yeah, that's true.
So if we're comfortable and we're just going through the paces in life and then you want to be what everybody has over here, or you're saying this person has this and I want this, then get uncomfortable. And get uncomfortable and then watch what happens.
Yeah, that's been my experience as well. And sometimes people will ask me, how did you do that? And I'm like, I don't really know. I just decided that I didn't want things to be the way they were before, or I didn't want things to stay that way. And I created a world that I didn't even know was possible.
Right.
I also have very great parents that taught me hardworking and lots of really good core values. And so I think that does come into play.
Sure.
Something, too, that I think is cool for us to talk about is we both built careers in male-dominated industries, which, unless you've been there, you know it's just a little different. You have a little different struggles or things that you have to deal with differently, and you did it really well. And not only in a male-dominated industry, but also as the female name, a voice for all these sports shows, our sports games as well. And so I would like to know a little bit about coming into that, because I can only imagine 30 years ago, drastically, it's still not easy for women in those industries.
But different, right?
But different,
It's better now. I don't know that it will ever completely be the way it is for a male sports reporter or anchor, but I will give a shout out to Mike Bush, who I did my internship with at KSTK at Channel 5 here in St. Louis. And the very first time he had me go out in the field was with Trey Wingo, who's now, I don't watch sports anymore, but he was with ESPN. I think he probably still is. He's like, go over with him to the Cardinals game, and the Cardinals game was wrapping up, and I knew I was going into the locker room. And it's funny when you hear this, and any athlete will crack up when they hear this comment. He's like, go in, just absorb everything you can from Trey, but let me stress something to you. You've got your clipboard. Don't drop your pen. Okay. You know where I'm going with that. All right. Yeah. You got a bunch of naked guys in it. Don't drop your pen. If you do, just do this. But it was, and I've said this to you off the air that, and I still don't understand to this day, why can't they get dressed? And why can't we just go into a room and because they all leave in their suits.
Right.
And I love that, by the way. I hope that never goes away. That's just, your first impression and your lasting impression. So when Wayne Gretzky was here, right, the greatest of all, it was that we would interview him after he was dressed in a big conference room. And I'm thinking, well, shouldn't they all be equal? Yeah. Why can't they all get dressed? Yeah. I know you're turning fast to get, the games are ending. You got to get your report on and you got to get it into the newscast. I get it, but I don't know. They could have thrown something on.
Sure.
But then here's the other thing. There's a lot of those guys go, oh, well, then would males be able to be in a female locker room? The answer is no.
Right.
So it's a double, right? There's a double standard there. But yeah, I don't want to go into the whole Me Too movement that everybody talked about and all the movies and stuff that were out there. Does it exist? Does it still exist? Probably. Did it exist back then? Sure. Did we speak up? No, because there's so many things of we're going to lose the job, or what's somebody going to say? Are they ever going to believe you? Sure, it happened to all of us.
Sure.
And any woman that says it didn't, you're lying. Trust me on that. Did it happen to the extreme that I've seen in some? No, and I feel blessed for that. Yeah. But I do have a lot of those athletes that I used to cover that actually have apologized. Not even asking for it, but it was, you know what? Now the more we think about it, we shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's cool, right? good for you for saying that. But yeah, we are human beings and we're just here to do a job.
Yeah. I think the cool part about that too is that throughout that, obviously when we look at your career and look at what you're doing now and why you do it, you maintained a layer of integrity that a lot of times I see, because so in the automotive industry where I was, it was a similar, I knew what I think you and I both kind of did was realize, yes, some of that's happening. And of course, if it would have gone to a different extreme, I likely would have spoken up.
Right.
And because it didn't, the things that did occur, I just kept my head, like my eye on the prize, my head down, and did my part, and did my best to keep it as much integrity for myself.
Absolutely.
But to build it to where I then became a person that when I walked in the room, I was respected. Even though I was the youngest and the only girl in the room, they respected me. And I think you did the same thing.
I did, and I think, the good thing is I have maintained friendships with mainly hockey players. I love the sport still to this day, and I look back at covering hockey and baseball and football, and it was those St. Louis Blues players back in the late 90s, early 2000s that I'm still friends with to this day. And they come back and they look at it as, there's some of them that I don't have respect for because I know the way they would treat some of the female reporters. But then there's others that have come back and said, you know what? You were here to do a job, and we probably made it so much harder for you, right? We're hitting on you, we're doing this, we're doing that. Yes, but it is the awareness. So if we could get it out there of everyone just has a job to do, right? And I know there's going to be people that feel like, well, you don't belong in the industry. There's still that mindset.
Yep.
It's not as bad, though, Jamie, as it was 30 years ago. Now it's much more, okay. I mean, I was blessed to do color commentating for high school football in my very first job. And it was teaching me. I didn't want to do play-by-play. Boy, mad props for those who do play-by-play.
Yeah.
That I never wanted to do. But color commentating was cool. And then being able to cover sports. And then even, let's take sports aside, getting into the news industry alone was much more male-dominated.
Right.
And you had the old boys club that long time ago didn't feel like women belonged behind the desk, anchoring, etc. That has changed, and I'm glad for that, and for the better. I think it's much smaller percentage now of people that would say that women don't belong in this business or that business.
That's good. Well, and that leads me to another thing, too, is I think there was a lot of stereotypes, and I think to an extent there still is, but a lot of people auto-judge women in certain jobs, in certain positions, and they assume certain things about them. And I feel like the more I've gotten to know you, I've realized that I feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, that even if people were making those judgments or those assessments about you, it didn't even faze you. You knew who you were and you stayed in that.
Well, and that has evolved though, right? So when I got into one of the other parts of our brand, which is my personal training and life coaching, I've been a life coach for 20 years before it became a cool thing, right? And everybody's jumping on. When you really deeply care about someone, as a trainer, you don't train them from the physical side of it, the aesthetic side of it. You dig deep into where are the problems? What is, I go through timeline therapy. You might be 30 years old, but you're stuck as a 5-year-old from abuse. You might be 50 years old, but you started doing comfort eating to go through the problems that you're dealing with, right? So that's someone deeply caring, and you're asking these questions and you're paying attention to them. So I teach. Was I always this way? No, I think a lot of people who follow me here in town know I have this medical story about having this massive blood clot when I was 19. It drastically changed my life. And from 19 years on, I every day know that the blessings I have with having breath in my lungs is something I will never take for granted because our lives can be gone just like that. So for me, why waste time being weighed down by what others are thinking? What they think about you is none of your business. And you will be in such a great place when you start to realize when you walk away from the table, if they're talking about you, don't ever go back to that table.
Right.
That's a really powerful thing to think about. And those friends that you think are great friends that all of a sudden ghost you, they walk away from you haven't seen them in years, they don't really care about what you're doing. Why would you want them in your life? All these things have helped me personally and professionally. So if someone else wants to be jealous or judge, I don't have any time for them. There's no need for it.
That's beautiful. And again, like you said, I'm glad you talked about it this way because I feel like a lot of people will come in 20 years or 30 years into an experience and say it like it's, oh yeah, everybody just does that. It's so easy. No, it comes with the territory. You build that resistance. You build that belief the more you move forward. And then there's those moments where you're like, wait a minute. No, I'm not going to let that throw me off course because that's not my, like you said, it's not my business what they are worried about. And I think that's one of the common denominators I find amongst people who do pave their own path. Is that, there's going to be ridicule. There's going to be like, what are you doing? Yeah. But as long as you see it and you stay on that path, that's really what matters the most.
It is. And there will be a lot of jealousy out there for whatever reason. I don't get it. And unfortunately, you see it a lot with women, right? Instead of women lifting up women, which we need more of, don't be jealous of them. Just if you like something that they have, surround yourself with it more. Ask questions more. We're not going to be for everybody, right? You've heard the whole thing. You're not everybody's cup of tea. And that's okay. I love to say, that's okay. Yeah. Right? Find those that do. Get into a different group or join whatever. Get involved in the hobbies that you have, and you'll find your community that's waiting there for you. But yes, the hate breeds hate. Kindness breeds kindness. And I much more want to sit in a circle of kindness than hate any day.
Yeah. Well, and to think about it, what I like to talk to people about is the ripple effect. So everybody that you are having this conversation with, anybody that you have on your show, people who are watching, the ripple effect from that, and especially with you going live every single morning, Monday through Friday, those moments of those topics are creating a ripple effect. Right. It can start the trajectory of somebody's day drastically different.
It does. I do motivational speaking, and I always love the room when I laugh at this, and I say, if you don't realize how much power you give someone that you either watch in news or listen to in news on the radio, and the beginning, and it's nowhere does it, it's unfortunate that nowhere is it different. I hope that someday a network will realize you're losing all these numbers because people don't want to start their day like this anymore. Yeah. But what we call the A block or the opening block is all death and destruction. Horrific things are going on in the world. Where do you have positivity and something that serves that person? Buried deep into the half hour, and you reset the show. And then it comes, maybe if you're lucky, closer to the beginning of the hour, and it just is this cyclical effect. Yeah. I said no more. So I do news you can use. It's stuff that I consider to be what we used to call water cooler talk, or you want to tell your family, you want to tell your friends, oh my gosh, did you hear about this? Yeah. If by chance I give you anything that you would consider to not be the happiest thing, it's only for one reason, and that is, as a community, what can we do to better ourselves? Because we can't let this continue to happen. Yeah. It's that. And so when I talk to a room, I always say this, do you have any idea how much power you gave us? And they're like, what do you mean by that? So you tell me, let's say you get up at 5 a.m., 6 a.m., 7, whatever, wherever that newscast is, you turn it on, it's habitual, you hear what we say, you don't know why, but you're so mad at the world. You turn it off because you've had enough. It's habitual. If you have a husband, a wife, kids, dogs, you start yelling at them. You don't know why. You trip over a dog toy and you're ticked off at the dog, but it would be easier if you didn't start your day that way, right? You get in the car, something said on the radio by someone that you're listening to, you don't like what they say. You look up at a billboard, you don't like what it says. Somebody swerves in front of you, you don't like that. You get to work, you're mad at your boss, you're mad at your coworkers. Do you get all this? What's happening? You come back home. Do you hear my breathing? It's exhausting. Yeah. And you do it day after day after day until you don't. Yeah. And I will not feed that into people's souls any longer. So I do the exact opposite. So that when you're done with watching my show in the morning, I hope that you are ready to attack the day and maybe be the person that sets the pace of how everybody else, they're like, why is Jamie so happy? Well, I started my day with Monica, and oh my gosh, she gave me hope and inspiration and light. Yeah. It is a really powerful thing that you give someone that you watch or listen to.
That's a great key to think about, is I think a lot of people don't take the weight of what you choose to consume is huge.
It is.
It's very, very big. So I remember when I first started my business, I was used to going into work every day, right? I knew what I needed to do there. I went there at a certain time. And then you're in this spot of, oh, nobody's holding me to this but me. And it was in creating those habits of, wait, I noticed, because I started writing every day. And then I noticed that sometimes my writing would be influenced by something that I had watched or read that morning. So then the habit had to change to where I don't consume anything besides sometimes like meditation music before I wrote. So then those words were coming straight out of my head and not influenced by someone else. But that's how I was able to create the habits and structure to do what I've done this whole time. And I'm assuming that some of those habits that you have, when you no longer had to be at the station at 1:30 in the morning, thank God for you. Like that's probably like 6 a.m. is not a big deal to you at all.
No, we're eating dinner at 9 o'clock.
Right. So when you left what I guess you would call like your corporate world, which I'm sure was also chaotic, running all around, were those the kind of things, or what were the key points that you feel like kept you on track and from like losing that structure that's necessary to make this work?
On track and grounded. right? Forever grounded. So it started many, many years ago, and it is a daily practice that I get up in the morning. Now I've actually leveled up, with 2025 in January, it's always every January. So it's not a whole New Year's resolution. It is what you do. How can you level it up more? So it's prayer or meditation, intention in the morning. I hit my knees now. I didn't used to. And I don't know why. And everyone's like, so why? I don't know. It's like I was called to, instead of laying in bed and saying my prayer, I get up and then I look at the sunshine and it's just like I take a deep breath in. So and I'm not ever pushing faith on anyone, but prayer, meditation, intention, do one of those in the morning. Yeah. Then if you want to consume something positive, watching or listening, do it. But my whole thing when I do these speaking engagements, I say, can you give me 5 words every single day? And they're like, well, yeah, that's easy. I'm like, okay, but start doing it. So what are the 5 words? I'm going to give you 3 of them. So I am huge on journaling. My whole mantra when I left the broadcasting side was, I know my value, and the offer that was given to me was a gut punch. Yeah. And I right away though, but it was beautiful, right? Because people are like, oh, but I missed watching. I'm like, well, watch now,
you
right?
can still watch me.
Yes, but now you can watch better. But it was like all over everything I felt was know your value, Monica, know your value. And it became my mantra. And it's all over everything that we do, that I knew my value. And if I had accepted that, what kind of message would I be putting out there to the people that I help along if I had accepted a 1% increase in which is what I was being offered, which was very unfortunate for how hard I was working. And I knew that. And there was others being offered like a crazy amount. I'm like, they're just phoning it in. This doesn't make any sense, right? But it's the way the industry went. And it was a blessing, even though at the time you feel like, huh? Yeah. And then I was like, this is the greatest blessing of my life. Okay, so I'm going to journal and journal and journal like crazy. So in the morning, I ask people to give me a word of the day. I know it's become a thing to do a word of the year. I'm much more in the present moment because we're not promised tomorrow or next year. So I will ask you, right? I'm going to put you on the spot. Yeah. Give me a word right now that you're feeling.
Intent.
Okay, so see how easy she did it? But when I go to speak to people, they'll go, I don't know. I'm like, you do. No, I don't. Say it. And then all of a sudden they'll say it. And I'll go, see, you are looking for someone to say that it's okay for you to say what you're saying. You're looking for someone at this table to not judge you. It just be in your lane and say it. So for me, it could be so many levels of things.
Sure.
Today was insightful. Okay, so I write insightful down, and then I ask everybody to draw a triangle. I'm all about the triangle of life theory. Okay. So my theory is that 33 1/3%, if it's given to mental, physical, spiritual, you make up 100% balanced. Okay, but you could wake up today and be like, my mental side is just really struggling, which in the world we've seen so much mental health, but it's great that people are talking about it as opposed to feeling like they're swimming alone.
Right.
So if it's your mental side, you're going to put mental on the top of your triangle. And then what's next? Is it your spirit, your soul feels a little hurt? It's in the middle. But if you are like me, where you get up and you're like, I'm ready to work out or go for a walk, and no one really ever has to tell me to work out, well, physical's at the bottom of my triangle. It does not mean it has less weight.
Sure, that
makes sense. It still gets done. So what have I given you? Mental, physical, spiritual. You just put them wherever they are put in the triangle. So now I have 4 words of my day. I go throughout my day, and if I continue to have people or circumstances try to throw me off course, what do I go back to? My intentional word.
I see.
Okay.
Gotcha.
And then at the end of the day, I write a word of gratitude.
Oh,
what does that look like? And so if the entire day, and I understand that we get horrific messages, we get a phone call of someone's, whatever it may be. So yes, that's been a really hard day. You have to be so introspective to think, what did go right? Was it a person at a gas station that looked and went, you're so pretty, your eyes just beam, and you're like, that's a stranger, right?
Right.
They have nothing to gain from that. You go back and go, that stranger. And you write that down, and it hopefully helps you sleep a little bit better, so you're restful, and then you start the day back over again. Yes, that information that you got the day before is hard, but that's how I try to help people. Like, don't let it weigh on you, or how are you ever going to get better? If you just sit in the toxicity and the drama and the hate and the anger and the fear and the anxiety of the world, how are you ever going to get better? When you got to take care of yourself first and foremost, which people sometimes think is that egotistical. You get that, right?
Yeah.
But how is anybody else around you going to be okay if you don't take care of you? It's not an ego thing at all. It is, I'm okay now. My fiance, my husband, my children, my coworkers, if you're the boss, your employees, they'll be like, okay, this person seems to be okay. If you're not, watch what happens with everybody around you.
Yeah.
So that goes back to, you've got to take care of number one. And then take care of everybody else.
And you know what I love about that is that it ties in very much to everything I've always trying to talk about on the show and showing different examples and different ways to approach it, because everybody has their own way. And I love that because it makes it very easy, but that's also very customizable to whoever it is. Okay, so talking about being grounded.
Yes.
That is such a great practice ties into one of the big pieces of the puzzle of Operation B. So when I came back from taking a break for health purposes, and had to step back and really readjust the way I was approaching everything, because I was more focused on everybody else than myself, because it was easier. Because when my health stuff I had no answers, it was frustrating.
Sure.
So it was easier for me to look outward and focus on the doing. And so that became the topic of conversation. There was still the conversation of mindset, lots of journaling, lots of that, but it deepened in a really cool way. So when I came back to doing the show again, I wanted to change the name so that it embodied that more. And so when we're talking about things I always ask a guest, especially because anybody I bring on, there's a layer to them that's very productive, and their wellness is very important to them, and it's obvious. So those you answered before I even could ask you, because that is a beautiful way of showing how do you maintain that, and then being able to provide that as something that's easily repeated is really, really nice, because a lot of times, again, people will do it for a couple of days. But at that, there's no, oh, I messed up, I can't start again. It's like, no, you didn't mess up.
Well, and the whole thing about people, if I was a day of the week, I'd hate to be Monday.
Right.
Okay?
Sure.
There's so much pressure on a Monday. But here's where people go wrong, Jamie. So on a Friday, if you decide, if she calls me up and says, oh my gosh, I love our show, can we go get drinks? Let's go get drinks. Am I going to sit there and think, oh, how many calories am I consuming? When you get to a point to release yourself from that stress, you're going to start to really, really live. Sure. How did you gain that 50, 100, 200 pounds? How did you get in a toxic relationship? You just continue to repeat and repeat and repeat. So on a Friday, if I go out and have drinks with friends, or I want to have a pizza with you, I am not going to sit in that moment and just beat myself up to do it and then just say, oh, I'm just going to throw the whole weekend away and I'll start on Monday. That's where people go wrong. So it is, so what? You want to eat a pizza? Eat a pizza. Right. Don't eat a pizza every single day.
Sure.
That's where the problem lies, right? So on Saturday, do I clean things up? Sunday, right? So do I drink more water? Do I start my day and my soul with something positive? Yes. Do I want to be a leader and help other people? Do I want to be kind and just have everybody follow that? Do better. It is a choice. And I know people are going to watch and go, it's not that easy. I didn't say it was easy.
I know.
I said it's a choice. Don't mistake that. It is not easy. How have I maintained being healthy my whole life? I chose it. I don't choose to surround myself with drama. I don't choose to sit at a table with negativity. And that might mean my table gets smaller and smaller. And boy, does my life get happier and happier.
Right.
Okay?
It does.
It's a real thing. And I choose to work out every day. I'm not obsessed with it. I've been an athlete my whole life. But I make sure it's a part of my day. It wouldn't make sense if I didn't, right? If I'm a personal trainer and I don't do it, I will never preach it and not do it. Walk the walk, talk the talk, right? It's important.
We were talking about that this morning. I remember years ago, I was in Arizona at do you know who Dan Clark is? He played, he was an All-American in football, and then he was a coach, and then he became a speaker. And I remember Tony knowing him. I was going to these events for a while there that had a lot of like the bro entrepreneur guys as the speakers. And then I had Dan Clark, and I'm telling him about it, and he'd always just kind of like, okay. And then he goes, wait a minute, Dan Clark. And he looks, and he was so excited for me to hear him speak. And it was incredible. So in that, this is not part of what I was going to tell you, but I'm going to tell you the whole story now because it's really good. So in those kinds of settings, what I would notice is these guys would only show up for their time to speak. If it's a whole day of panelists, like they would only show up for their time. Dan, who had been doing this for 30 years and actually was at a layer that some of them probably couldn't even dream to reach, sat in that room the whole day. And so when he spoke, he was the last to speak. And when he spoke, he brought in pieces of every single guy who spoke that day's stories. But one of the main things that he talked about that I loved the most is like, you have to stop practicing what you preach and only preach what you practice. And when he said that, I still get goosebumps when I think about it because it was so impactful. Because there's a lot of pressure we can put on ourselves of going, oh God, am I doing what I said I was going to do? So instead, those things that are so core to you, those are the things that you share. Those are the things that you can, encourage other people to do because no, it's not easy. But also what we're not changing, we're choosing.
Sure.
So it brings you back to that. It really is a choice. Are they always easy? No. But it still is a choice.
So I don't know Dan, but kudos to Dan because Dan doesn't have an ego. Dan is not full of himself. He wouldn't have sat in that room to listen to everyone and choose to take pieces of that and use it probably in his speaking if he didn't have an ego. I just recently spoke at St. Charles Community College's entrepreneurial symposium. And so I knew when I was speaking, I was there way early. I decided to actually do my show live from there.
Oh, cool.
Then went in, was walking around, meeting people in the room, and then they expected me to speak and leave. Nope. I stayed to the very, very end. They came up to me and they're like, thank you so much for staying. I'm like, why wouldn't I? There's great speakers everywhere. And I listened to the people before me, used a little bit of that in what I was saying, and then listened to the rest of the people and then consumed all of it, and then went home and was grateful for what I heard. But the ego gets in the way. Right? And I have people that will go and I do MC work and auctioneering work. I want to be involved from the beginning to the end, whether I help consult them to level up every year and raise more money for the charity. I will come. They will say, do you just want to come like a little bit before? I'm like, no, I want to come to dinner with you. I want to meet. Let's find out where's your big spenders. Let me have fun with them. Let me stay. You have a band. I'll stay and dance. They're like, oh my gosh. And so it's like people put people up on a pedestal and I'm like, let's knock me down off of that as quick as possible. I'm real. Right? I'm authentic. There's nothing out of my mouth that's ever fake. And I just believe that if the world was more real, we would be in a much better world.
It would be a lot less complex. I mean, human beings are complex anyways. There's lots of layers to us. And we make it worse by trying to put up these facades all the time because you can't keep up with them.
Correct.
You're telling a bunch of laws, or a bunch of lies. Like you're not going to remember every one of them.
But don't you see? So everybody is all into, I want follows and I want views and I want the clicks. And I'm telling you, the more you strip the filters off, the more you take the makeup off and you become real and raw, you'll have more of that. And then more people will do it. If you set that standard, just watch what happens. That's my hope for the world. I will continue to do this as much as I can. Sure, I'll be dressed up. I love fashion, right? Jamie's figured that out of me. She's like, oh, cute outfit, cute outfit. I've always been known for my fashion that comes from my mother. She was a seamstress, and so I grew up in a wonderful shadow of watching my mom, right? And so it's always been my thing. She always was like, first impressions are everything, right? Or when you go to the grocery store, people are like, Monica, we're just going to the grocery store. I don't know. We might run into someone who could be a future boss, or I might be interested in having them now join my team. Or way back when it used to be my mom going, you never know, you might meet a guy that you're going to date. And I was like, okay, let me not look disheveled, right? Let me look good. So there's so many things that I try to teach people. It's just those small things. Consume them in small parts, and then use what works for you. Don't try to do it all and change. That's where people get overwhelmed. They try to do everything in a weekend, and it's like, oh, I can't do this. Be present. Be focused, and become a better listener.
Yeah, it really is. And to yourself, too. That's the other piece. I feel like people will try to eat the whole elephant in one bite and then be completely overwhelmed, and then they don't do any of it. And then they secretively feel really guilty about that, so they don't tell anyone, and they hide back into this corner, and it becomes this cycle. And to where instead, I always tell people, if you want to adjust things, pick one or two things. Do that one or two things for 2 weeks minimum, and then let's talk about adding a third.
Yeah, so what do you tell people as far as a habit being formed? How long does it take?
I typically tell people realistically, it's 3 months. And a lot of people that I see, because that gives them the space, which we all know will happen, to have the days where they don't do it, they don't admit that they didn't do it till a couple days later, and then they're like, oh gosh, I have to start again. And that'll happen a couple times. Until they stop, and then they stop. And then all of a sudden, it's been this many months, they're like, whoa, okay, I have been doing this. I don't even have to think about it anymore. Right. That's one of the things I've noticed just from observing also.
It's so, you've heard probably in life, habits could be formed in 14 days, 21 days, right? 3 weeks. It is, watch what happens. So I have a client that comes in and I do assessments on them, and it's, let's see how strong your upper body is, your lower body, your core strength, your flexibility, your cardiovascular. So from a core standpoint, what is the exercise? A plank. Ideally, you can hold that plank for 30 seconds, and then we can build from that. If you're at 5 or 10 seconds, and I have clients that will be like, that Monica's talking about me. No, there's a lot. Trust me. 5, 10 seconds. But guess what? If we do it every day, and I do mean every day, so here's my thing. Get up, I hit my knees, say my prayer, go down and do a 1-minute plank every single day, or longer if you want to. But if you do 1 minute, you've got a strong core, the foundation of our body. So what is your foundation of life? You've got to find what is that core message or core strength. So if they look at day 1 to day 21, trust me, you're not still doing a 5-second plank. I guarantee you, you have gone to 10 or 15 or 20, or you're up to 30 seconds. It didn't happen overnight. It was a choice that you made to hit the ground and to do that. But then you continue to do it. And yes, if you have an injury or something throws you off course, you at least have a foundation, and it is not so hard to come back to, as opposed to someone who chose to never ever do it, and how hard it is to get started.
I think I always go back to examples about fitness just because it is a much easier to measure item to show you, because you can not only will you physically see, but you'll feel it, all those things. You'll start to see the difference. All of those things can happen for it being measurable. But I know with a plank or with that, I remember my friends used to make fun of me when I had a trainer and he would make me do planks. They thought he was like, he added it. No, I added it. And I added it because to me, it's a mental game. A plank is very much, it becomes quite the mental game, because even if you know you can do a minute, your brain's like, well, you don't have to do it. And you're like having this conversation back and forth with yourself the whole time.
Well, and for people who love to lift, which I do, or they love to run or whatever, there's movement happening, right? In a plank, it's this isometric hold. And there's so much things that can be going through your head. And yes, you're beating yourself up instead of being present. And I'm so they'll all sit there and try and talk. And I'm like, nope. It is our exercises are now underway, and start to have this conversation of release the shoulders, draw your navel in, be in it, but you are having a conversation with yourself.
Absolutely, and that is one of my favorite things about fitness, is that it is a mental game. So during me having to take a break, my body was not letting me do much. So it's been very slow, simple yogas, things, simple walks, things like that, and adjusting from doing really heavy deadlifts and squats and things to this more simplistic. Talk about a mental game. It was hard not to have that voice telling me that, oh my gosh, this is pathetic. Like, what are you doing? And I had to reestablish a relationship. But it's funny because when you think about the difference between, it's the same concept, just in a different way. And I'm so grateful. It sucked, don't get me wrong. But grateful for the things that I learned, because it made me better to me, not to everybody else.
But don't you think, so yes, we all came from however we wanted to train. And when you suddenly have to shift that pattern, you talk down to yourself of, oh, I'm not deadlifting anymore. I'm not doing plyometric work. But whatever your guiding source is, for me, I truly believe you are thrown off that game. You may have an injury, or you may have something horrific happen in your life because you didn't make the choice to change. So he or something is going to make it happen. But then you come back and realize that Pilates isn't easy and yoga is not easy. Even though, and I always love the story, I'm not going to say who he is. He'll know who he is. There is a professional athlete that I used to cover, and we had him come into a Pilates class. Now, all these women have been doing it forever, right? Pilates is not easy.
No, it's very hard.
Right? So it comes from a dance background. Dance is not easy. And so we're all in there, and here he is, this professional athlete, Hall of Famer, and he gets on the reformer, and and his legs are shaking like crazy, and he's looking at all the women, he's like, what is wrong with me? And I'm like, see, never again say that what you do on the field is so much harder than this. And he's like, mad respect from that point forward. But I also think it's when you started to see professional athletes get involved in core training, flexibility training, dance, so many levels of things, what they realized, and I love the coaches that have them do that, you have to be well-rounded in life and in your physical side.
Especially in the agility movements. I know, so Tony can still to this day, he's 260 pounds, pure muscle, and he can bring his leg all the way up here. We're laying in bed next to each other. His foot can be next to my head. And I'm like, what are you doing? But he will tell you he could be stronger, a guy 3 times his size that lifts every day because of his level of flexibility. And I watch him do it. And I know, because when I was lifting, we weren't talking about that very much. And then that's when I started the flexibility training as well. And so even in these times where I couldn't do much, I could stretch.
It's important because if you only do one particular way of training, watch the injuries that start to take place. So as you are getting older, you've got to incorporate. Well, at the same time, though, let's say the same thing. If you've always only done cardio or yoga, etc., you do have to pick up a weight. Weight-bearing exercises, especially for ladies, it's important for osteoporosis, osteopenia. It's all to help your bones from not being brittle. Women, though, never wanted to pick up a weight forever ago because I thought they were going to look like a man. I'm like,
Yes.
you don't have unless you're going to take a bunch of testosterone and steroids, you're not going to be all bulky. So you do need a combination of all of it.
Yeah.
And the body, we go back to the balance thing, the body will feel so much better when you are doing cardio work, resistance training, body weight resistance, lifting weights, flexibility, cardio, Pilates, whatever it may be. But what I would say is if you're going to hire a trainer, never let a trainer force something on you.
Yeah.
Find what you love and then you'll stick to it.
Yeah. No,
I will never
absolutely.
have you do something that you're like,
agree.
I really hate this.
Yes.
Okay, well, gosh, there's so much to do in life. I don't need you to do that.
Yep.
Let's find something else.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think it's the same thing really with a coach in any aspect, is that if somebody tells you this is the only way that you can create whatever the thing is you're asking for, that's not the guy.
No,
That's
hire
not the
somebody
coach.
else.
There's so many ways. I remember when I first started and was teaching people how to plan. That was teaching people how to organize things. And they would ask, well, what's the planner that you suggest? And I'm like, well, I have my favorite. And but I'm not going to tell you which one is for you. I can give you some suggestions. It's different for everyone. So I would make like mock schedules for them. Let's look at this for a week and see how you feel and adjust accordingly. And I remember a lot of coaches telling me, if you would just pick one way, then you can make a whole lot more money. And I'm, well, that's not my point. Like, sure, I want to pay my bills, and that doesn't feel right to me. So I refuse to ever just pick the one way, because everybody's so drastically different.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then that's a true testament to life of when I became a trainer. Well, actually, even before, I remember my mentor, God rest his soul, when he decided to say, I want you to become a trainer. And I'm like, I wasn't even thinking about that. I was an athlete, but I was working out after my blood clot, right? I was in the gym like crazy. That was where I went, and I didn't know it at the time, but that was where I went to take care of my mental health, right? I was taken away from my sport. I was taken away kind of from what I was studying. I was never going into broadcasting. I was going into medicine. Oh. But I had to be monitored in St. Louis for 2 years, and I took all my electives to transfer back, and I took a broadcasting class for the heck of it. Here we are all these years later, but I use all my sports medicine in my training.
Yeah.
That's one part of me. The caring part is what really, I think, sets me aside as the trainer that I am. But it was, at the time, people coming up to me, girls really coming up to me going, oh, hey, can you put me on a plan? And I was like, I'm not a trainer, right? I was 22, 23 years old. And he would hear me say that, and he's like, you have no idea that what you're saying is so spot on. I want you to become a trainer. And I said, well, I don't know that I want to. And he goes, I want you to, because you'll be such a good trainer. But what I was saying was, just because of what's working for me doesn't mean it's going to work for you.
Yeah.
I don't know your medical background. I don't know any injuries you have. I don't know any contraindications for medicine you might be taking. All these things that I was saying very young, had no idea at the time that it was so spot on.
Right.
And then he did talk me into it, and I'm glad. And so from 99 on, I have been a trainer or involved in wellness, working with corporations and doctors and medical field, and I feel ridiculously blessed for it. I actually don't know that I'll ever not be a trainer.
Yeah.
I don't know if it'll always be 100% of who I am, but I love having it as a part of me because I just love to teach and lead and help. I mean, being able to know that someone comes in as this wounded soul and you help them become what they are destined to become, it just gives me chills every day. You get it.
Yeah, I do. It's beautiful. I have a client right now who he just bought basically an entire city block, and where he's in Wyoming, and I'm helping him get a new system in place, and I'm meeting all of these people from these companies that are used to doing really salesy pitches, you know, for a management system. And I'm handling all of those conversations because he's busy. Like, he needs to not deal with that. I'll deal with it. And they're so confused. And then when I explain my part in the relationship, he and I met before his company actually started. It was an idea. And I've been with him the whole time since. And I explained it to some of these trainers who talk to shops every day. And it's just so funny to watch their faces. And I said to one of the guys, he's like, that's got to be so rewarding. I was like, yeah,
it is.
That's why I'm willing to have all these weird sales calls with all of you, because he doesn't need to, and it is rewarding. I want him to be successful, and if I can help, then I will. And it kind of leads me to this piece of, you have a lot of hats that you wear, right? And we've only talked about a couple of them. So one of the things I like to tie in and to kind of close up with often in my shows is, how do you, because everybody feels very busy, even if they aren't wearing that many hats, our lives are all what they are. And oftentimes people feel frantic and busy and like they can't manage it all. And with that, it's a kind of a hefty question. But for you, we can go on as much as you'd like to about it. But for you, what are some very key, other than the morning routine that you just explained to us, what are other key things that you think help you manage all of that?
Okay, so this is a great question and an easy one for me to answer, because one of the things that I watched, and I think it's because I was in the role and so I know it. So when I was a news director in radio, I used to have people that were either PR people that would pitch me stories, or it was someone that I did a story on, or maybe it was a family member that wanted, the audio from it or whatever. I made sure that I always responded in that day's time, because they deserve that respect.
Yeah.
When I started to get deeper into my broadcasting field and I would see this news director or this boss or whatever say, oh, I'll get back to them when I want to. To me, I saw that very egotistical. And I thought, no, I don't care if it's not a full-blown message that you get back to them, but acknowledge that you got it.
Yeah.
And it's a life lesson for all of you to learn. It's called respect. Respond to that text. Respond to the phone call. Again, you may not be able to go in depth, but at least let them know so they're not waiting and wondering. They deserve it. Somehow, somebody, some way, if there's other people on your team, then have them return it.
Sure.
But respect goes a long, long way, and I will never lose that because it's important. Yeah. That's a big part of who I am. Yes, I am very busy. So to run it all through my brand, I was told I was a brand 10 years ago. It didn't make sense to me. It wasn't my time. Yeah. When it was my time, it all of a sudden gave me chills from head to toe of, you are your own brand. So you're a personal trainer. I was a director of wellness, life coach. I do MC work and have for a long, long time. I got into auctioneering. That's usually where people are like, how did you become an auctioneer? I was asked because the auctioneer wasn't there that day. Sure. Would you auctioneer? I'm like, sure, but I'm not going to do that. Hey, give me $5. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to have fun with them. And then here we are raising an insane amount of money, and it fills my soul, right?
Yeah.
All these things fill my soul. So I'm also a design and wardrobe consultant now for both men and women, but it was always men. I always thought you guys needed a lot more help back then. So I do a lot of custom work. Now it's amazing what we're able to do, but it used to be a lot of suits and tuxedos and shirts and slacks, whatever. Now it's everything from Lululemon-esque looking clothes, right? Polos, you name it. I love that. I'm very big into that fashion side. And then obviously as a host, how do you do it all? As well as one of the proudest things I am is the wife of a police officer. Yeah. How hard it is to see him leave every day, right? People always ask me, how do you deal with that? I trust.
Right.
I trust. There's horrific things that happen in our world. Someone can come walking into a church, a movie theater, your kid's school. It happens anywhere. Yeah. Yes, does he have a job that puts him out there a little bit more? Not as much, because he's a lieutenant now, so he's paid his dues, 30-something years. But I'm proud, and I say that over and over again, I'm a proud wife of a lieutenant that serves our country and it is a hero. All those things, though, could weigh on you. Sure. Instead, I make sure time management is very, very key. But I did all these things, Jamie, when I used to work in the news industry, right? Yeah. So it was working for the man or woman. Some of the things that you were like, this doesn't serve my soul, I can feel it. 8, 10, 12-hour days. Then going into personal training my clients, life coaching. But where are you taking care of you? Yeah. And I still fight with that sometimes of, I get up at 4:30 in the morning, which people are like, oh, that's sleeping in. After,
that's for you,
right? 3 hours of sleeping in. 4:30, I usually go till about 10:30 at night. No, it is a grind, but it's because I chose, we go back to choice again, I chose to do my own business. Yeah. I chose to have a show. And a lot of people are like, why? You've always done mornings. You could have slept in. I could, but think about the smart businesswoman. I chose to take the audience that I used to have away and say, come on over. And hey, come on over here. This is how I'll start your day. Then my day's already started and I can get into meetings. Yeah. You know, we can talk with people about coming on the show and taking my show on the road to them, which I love to do. There's a lot of people in the business that I came from, though, that they didn't want to go out and do remotes or go out to the community. For whatever reason, they just want to stay in that bubble. Yeah. And for me, it's the exact opposite. I want to come out and say thank you for making me who I am. Because I know for a fact I wouldn't be as far as I am today if it wasn't for the people allowing me to come into their home and to listen or to watch. And so it's gratitude, gratitude, gratitude every single day. Yeah. But I also have to have my dearest friends and family call me on it and check me when it is nothing but work. Sure. So you need those people to be right by your side going, I will always remember you for the way you made me feel. It's the memories that we create in life as opposed to all she ever did was work. Yeah. Right? So, yes, in the beginning part of being your own boss, It is heavily loaded here. Sure. And then you find that balance and you bring good people on with you that you can trust will carry out the levels of standards that you have.
Yeah.
But I'm a student of life every single day, and we all should be. We're always educating. And again, listen to the people that say, slow down a little bit.
Right.
Take care of yourself.
Yeah.
So I don't get me wrong, there is no perfection. And once we realize stop chasing perfection, then we're really starting to live.
Agreed. And that comes back to the place of being present, really.
Yep.
Everything that you said, I love it. Because along the lines of, if you have those people in place that can call you on when you need to come back a little bit, that also comes from a place of being able to respect them. And so each of those core words that you've used, I hope everybody who's watching has realized that those are core things that, again, are just choices.
It is.
So.
And humble.
Yeah.
Be humble and be kind.
Yeah. There's something that you talked about a lot, and I meant to actually tie this in earlier, but it's something that Tony and I discuss often about the difference between being a professional and somebody who thinks they deserve accolades because of what they did in their career. And so they just show up, and that's okay, because you and him are very similar in that aspect. It's like, you want me to do this? Okay, well, I'm going to show up early. I'm going to be educated on your company and your foundation. I'm going to stay and dance and do the things and be there, because otherwise, why would I come? And that's, I think, a piece that a lot of people, especially with like the online influencer situation and lots of that's missed a lot, is that when you bring in the heart and the foundation of who you are into that, people don't forget it. And that lasts.
It does. The entitlement aspect has got to, and I hope it's got a short shelf life. Yeah. I hope it goes away, because hard work and, again, who you are as a person will go, I mean, levels and levels and miles for you, as opposed to, I'm just going to come. I've got an ego. I've got an attitude. I'm going to do my thing. I'm out of here. I don't want to hire that person.
No, me
I
either.
want the person that's good, that has a track record of hard work, how you make somebody feel, how, you really have to pay attention. It goes back to being present, but pay attention. Like, if you're trying to date somebody, pay attention to how they treat their family. I was always taught, pay attention to how the guy treats his mom, his sisters, and also pay attention to how they treat a waitress.
That's what I was going to say. Yep, a waitress or someone at the drive-through window.
Yes.
Those are two things that always got me.
Pick up on it.
Absolutely.
And pay attention to how your animals act.
Yeah. Yes.
There was one guy that my dog was like, I was like, oh, she never growls. Okay, he's not for me.
Right. You're like, you can't be here. She just told me this isn't good. I don't need to know why.
Exactly.
So thank you so much for being here, Monica.
You.
I think that this conversation, guys, I hope that you pull lots of nuggets out of that. That's always my goal, is to bring someone in any conversation that can offer a perspective shift for people and open up a little bit for them, or show them that they're not alone, that they're not, if they're in that hard time, that hard moment, like with the bad day that you were describing, that it is really the simple key is to find at least one good thing, and it lets you close up that day and start again tomorrow.
Well, and if you do feel alone, start to realize that there are people, there's a community waiting for you. It's maybe not where you feel so alone right now, but, as I said, lean in on your hobby or find a new community, because we all need socialization. We all need to know that somebody has our back, but you have to have their back as well. It's never one-sided.
Yeah. Yep. And we have to have our own backs. And I think we covered a lot of that here too, where I think that gets missed a lot.
Yep.
Where we have to be able to check in and take care of ourselves too. So
amen.
Yes.
Thank you, my friend.
Thank you so much for being here. Guys, as always, if you like this episode, please make sure to hit that share button and send it to anyone that you think could benefit from that. And until next time, thanks. Thank you for listening to Operation B, the podcast. To support this message and to support the show, please make sure that you like, follow, and share the podcasts wherever you enjoy listening. And be sure to leave us a review on iTunes. Thank you for being here, and see you next time.